I welcome you to the program, The Maize, this brand new month. My name is Rosemary UKOKO-TEGA. The Maize is a summary of all activities at both chambers of the National Assembly for the week. We do this time, that is 8 p.m. every Friday. Today's highlights: inauguration of House Constitution Review Committee, motions on tackling food insecurity in the country at both Senate and House. Stay with us for details and more on ASO Television on DSTV 392, StarTimes TV 127, Free TV 507, UHF Band 38. A moment.
We are a nation blessed with people of diverse cultures, religions, languages, and opinions. It is ironic that we are now being ripped apart by our greatest strength, our diversity. We have allowed intolerance, insensitivity, bigotry, and nepotism to blind our vision of the greatness we can achieve working together as one. We may not have the same culture, nor religion, nor language, but we all belong to the same nation by the divine will of God. We did not choose to be Nigerians. Nigeria chose us. This nation is our divine heritage, and if we open our eyes, we would realize that what divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And by the comparison and conciliation of our differences, we will grow until our differences disappear. Our unity cannot be willed by mere declarations, nor do we get unity by ignoring the questions that beg for answers. We must celebrate our diversity and debate our differences without fracturing our unity. Our strength is not in our numbers, but in our unity, because even the weak become strong when united. Nigeria unite.
This message is brought to you by Abuja Broadcasting Corporation, owners and operators of ASO Radio 93.5 FM Abuja, ASO Television DSTV Channel 392, StarTimes Terrestrial Channel 127, Free TV Channel 507, People's TV Channel 285, and UHF Channel 38.
This is The Maize on ASO Television. We go ahead with details. Our first point of call today is the formal inauguration of the House Committee on Constitution Review. This was performed by the Speaker, Tajuddin Abbas. President of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, was present at the event through his deputy, Senator Jibrin Barau. Among other attendees are representatives of development partners, traditional leaders, and civil society organizations, CSOs. Major takes at the event are that the process will be all-inclusive one. The committee working with that of the Senate to deliver on their mandate in the next 12 months. Special attention is to be given also to power devolution, state police, and women agenda, among others. We have here now remarks by different dignitaries before the Speaker's speech. First, remarks of Chairman of the House Committee on Constitution Review, the Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Kalu.
The areas that are currently at the forefront, based on the bill proposals we have received so far. Some of them include the establishment of state police, state access to mines, increased participation of women in politics, clear specification of the taxes and levies to be collected by each tier of government, and the provision for the office of the Mayor of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, amongst others. Several bills proposals that were passed but did not make the President's assent during the 5th constitutional alteration has been brought back, and they include powers to the National Assembly and State Assembly to summon the President and state governors, and requirements of the government to direct policies towards ensuring the right to food and food security. This highlights the dynamic nature of the Constitution review process and is salientness to the democratic strengthening of our country. It is important to reiterate that we are willing to accommodate more proposals to enhance our Constitution and strengthen our democracy. In addition, we await executive-sponsored bill proposals that reflect issues on the renewed hope agenda of our very own president. Thus, the call to action is clear, and the pathway forward is illuminated by the principles of dialogue, principles of advocacy, principles of participation, principles of unity and inclusivity. Let us heed the voices of our fellow citizens from all walks of life and engage in open, inclusive, and transparent dialogue on constitutional reform. Let us bridge divides. Let us build consensus. Let us forge a common vision for the future of Nigeria.
Articulate very clearly a timeline of under 24 months for achieving reform of the Constitution. There are still very serious outstanding issues. Local government reforms remains a major issue in this country, that local governments are subjugated to states and not allowed to deliver on development that is promised when local government reforms happen in this country. We're yet to get those reforms. There is a new debate today about nature of policing. Some say state police. We have to address how this country can be very well policed and how we can deliver on security to our people, such that we do not, in creating state police, hand over the present deficiencies with policing from the national right down to state levels. A state police controlled by governors would not help with our national security concerns. They could, in fact, endanger human rights if we do not clearly define the nature of policing that we are discussing when we talk of state police. There are still outstanding other issues: devolution of powers, electoral reform, and our sister Eugenia talked about women. The special seats for women bill, Your Excellencies, are still pending in the National Assembly. We cannot have a situation where we have just about 16 or 13 women in the House of Representatives and only 4 senators. This is not speaking well of Nigeria at all. If we have a 469-member National Assembly and we have under 30 of these members just women, I think that if the National Assembly was to make a huge statement about this reform, it must clearly define for Nigerians how we can harness the effectiveness and resource that women possess as about equal number of population. So it is something that the National Assembly must consider. Your Excellency, Deputy Senate President, Your Excellency, the Deputy Speaker, how we can make special constitutional provisions to allow for greater representation of women in elective offices proportionate to their population. So there's quite a lot to go ahead with, but I also urge my colleagues in civil society, and I'm quite delighted that a lot of us are here in this room, to engage with this process. The Deputy Speaker has outlined the websites that this is, a lot of information is going to be available on. We will, as civil society, engage with the process and hope that this would give us very meaningful returns and reforms within the time frame already identified. I thank so very much.
I believe, and I hope many believe, that diversity is what makes democracy the best way of balancing interests and values across this nation, and makes Nigeria actually an example for the world in the way in which you do this. The UK and His Majesty's government is truly proud of our valued partnership with this country. And we see the federal government as tackling some major challenges with bold reforms which deserve more international support. And we see Nigeria as a key democracy, not just for regional, but also increasingly global geopolitics. So what this Constitutional Review Committee, what this review does, really matters, and it will be watched across the world. So as I highlighted by others, I really will be watching carefully some of the important issues before the committee as you undertake your task. As the Right Honourable Deputy Speaker said, and others, the issues include the devolution of powers, the role, the representation, the participation of women, issues enabling local governments to deliver better services for citizens, and many more proposals from different stakeholders deserving of debate, as is often the case. So as a long-term partner, the UK would like to express our goodwill as you work through these issues, and we'll continue to partner when we're invited to do so. And I know that there are other international partners in the room who are also providing various types of support.
There has always been and will always be debates and calls for review of the 1999 Constitution. Until we get it right, this debate will go on. Some pundits and citizens alike have called for a review of some parts and some sections of this Constitution, while some others have clamored for a holistic review of the Constitution. I, personally, have been a true federalist. I support a system of government in which several states unite under a central authority, but in which the states are empowered to address their own challenges and also be able to navigate its own destiny. On this note, permit me to say that the members of the 10th Oyo State House of Assembly, along with several other state houses of assembly and the speakers are here present, we consider the issue of the state and community police a critical component of national development. Security continues to be a weak area in our local domains where there is no, and we understand that where there is no security, there is no development. Although there could be concern of mismanagement of security operatives by governors, but in the long run, if you look at other models and other countries that practice state policing, we have the United States of America, they practice this system. I'm sure they did not get it right on the first instance, but with time, I'm very certain, with the cooperation of the stakeholders and everybody within, we would get this right. I assure you that through the Conference of Speakers of State Legislatures of Nigeria, all state houses of assembly in the country will collaborate and work diligently and strategically with the House of Representatives Committee on the review of the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. We will also work studiously and expeditiously to ratify the documents once they have passed down to the states by the National Assembly.
Permit me to draw your attention to Section 14 of 2B and C of the Constitution. So B says, and I quote, "The security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government." And C is to the effect that the participation by the people in their government shall be ensured in accordance with the provisions of the Constitution. End of quote. There is no doubting that the committee and the National Assembly has embarked on a very onerous task, but I do not have doubt in my mind that as difficult as it is, the quality of members of the committee and the determination which appears to have been put in place gives me assurance that at the end of the day, the assignment will be a huge success.
As we inaugurate the House Representatives Committee on the amendments of the 1999 Constitution, we are reminded of the profound responsibility that rests upon our shoulders as legislators of the people. This committee's task is not just a matter of legal review, but is a duty to enhance the framework that governs our collective aspirations, rights, and duties as citizens of this great country. It is an important opportunity to reinforce the pillars of democracy, justice, and equity that our nation stands on. As we embark on this critical endeavor, let us be guided by the principles of transparency, inclusivity, and diligence. Let us engage in discussions with open minds and a spirit of collaboration, recognizing that each perspective brought to the table enriches our collective decision-making process. The task ahead is challenging, yet I have no doubt that this committee, with its diverse expertise and dedication, is more than capable of rising to the occasion. Now that the committee of both houses have been duly constituted, let us begin the task with every seriousness that it demands and come up with amendments that satisfy the wishes and aspirations of our people.
And for those who are familiar with the context in which the 1999 Constitution emerged, the question that invariably arises is whether there is a legitimacy deficit that we confront. There's a great deal of debate about that, and I wouldn't have, unfortunately, the privilege of the time to address that question. But I think what is critical is that, as the Nigerian Constitution rightly points out in section 14, subsection 2A, sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom government, through the Constitution, derives all its authority and power. And if the Nigerian Constitution is made by we, the people, then it becomes imperative that the Nigerian people are front and center, that the Nigerian people are at the heart of Nigeria's constitutional experience. And it also means that in the context of this constitutional amendment exercise, we are conscious of that imperative. In his remarks this morning, the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives and Chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Constitutional Review made a very fundamental clarion call to what he calls bold and decisive action. And it invariably follows that in the context of the exercise that is unfolding, all the mandate bearers must be bold and decisive. So in terms of the question of legitimacy of the Constitution, clearly the reality is that there is a recurring debate about the legitimacy of the Nigerian Constitution, and this has generated contentions, contestations, and clarion calls for amendments. There are those who have argued, for instance, that members of the National Assembly are not competent to make fundamental alterations to the Constitution or to make fundamental changes to its fundamental structures and fundamental principles. There's a great deal of debate about that, and part of the reason why that question arises is that, quite apart from the context in which the Constitution emerged, there is also the fact that the Nigerian Constitution in section 9 does not address the question of a referendum. This is something that perhaps over the course of time you might need to engage in the context of constitutional amendment. I would like to focus on results, and therefore I'd like to engage the experiences that we have had, especially since 2010, when, as Clement Nwanko pointed out, we had the very first alteration exercise. And I've had the privilege of being part of this process at certain points in time, and I'd like to focus on some of the experiences over the course of time. Of course, we're familiar that from 2010 we have had alterations from numbers 1 to the last exercise, which was number 5 alteration. And my expectation is that we will now have a 6th alteration that will be very profound in its outcome.
Right, honorable colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we expect the 6th alteration under this 10th National Assembly to be the most comprehensive yet. As such, the task before the Constitutional Review Committee is profound. The House agenda is ambitious in its scope and encompasses wide-ranging issues pivotal to our national growth. Among these are the devolution of powers, including state policing, enhancement of fiscal federalism through local government autonomy, further decongesting the exclusive legislative list, recognizing and assigning constitutional roles for traditional institutions, and promoting inclusivity, particularly greater gender equity and women representation into appointive and elected positions. Regarding the latter, I employ this committee to align its work with the legislative agenda. I urge you to revisit the issue of additional or reserved seats for women across legislative bodies. Training in joint tickets and conferring citizenship on foreigners married to Nigerian women. Other critical areas for your consideration include implementing comprehensive electoral reforms to address the gaps identified in the aftermath of the 2023 general elections, strengthening the enforceability of legislative instruments, and institutional strengthening for greater accountability, among others. Several bills have already been introduced in both the Senate and the House, touching on some of these very important issues. I encourage members of the committee and all Nigerians not to shy away from the complexities and the debates that will arise during this process. Instead, let us embrace them as vital components of a vibrant democracy. The methodology to be adopted by this Constitution Review Committee will emphasize inclusivity, transparency, and collaboration. Equally, the process will involve states out of assembly to foster consensus and expedite adoption by states. But more importantly, the process will be deeply rooted in engaging with the Nigerian people at all levels, including traditional and religious institutions, pressure groups and trade unions, ethno-religious organizations, the diaspora community, and much more. As we embark on the essential task of constitutional review, the House has adopted a strategy of timely commencement. This proactive approach is designed to ensure, through engagement and deliberation, by starting early, we aim to facilitate comprehensive review process, allowing ample time for robust public engagements, detailed analysis, and thoughtful consideration of proposals for amendments. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture, I will require all members of the review committee to please rise for the inauguration. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to formally inaugurate the Committee on Constitutional Review of the 10th House of Representatives for the service of our nation. Thank you very much, as we pray that God may continue to bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
There was also a citizens' engagement during the event where discussants pointed areas of concerns to be specially noted by the committee. We go now to highlights of the week's plenary sittings. A motion of urgent public importance urged the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria to suspend implementation of its revised guidelines for the verification of nursing certificates issued by the Council pending outcome of investigation into controversy surrounding the new policy. This is standing in the name of Mr. Patrick Umo.
Also notes the revised guidelines for verification of certificates dated February 7, 2024, issued by the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria, which will come into force on March 1, 2024. Further notes that the revised guidelines, among others, stipulates that applicants for verification must have a minimum of 2 years post-qualification experience from the date of issuance of permanent practice license, obtain a letter of good standing from the Chief Executive Officer of applicant's place of work, and the last training institution attended and that processing of applications shall take a minimum of 6 months. Aware of the concerns, protest, and stiff opposition to the implementation of the revised guidelines by health professionals, led by the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives. Also aware that verification of certificates is to confirm and authenticate an already existing certificate issued by the Nursing and Midwifery Council. Therefore, the requirement for 2 years post-qualification experience before verification of certificate is unreasonable, arbitrary, and unfair, as it may, among other things, restrict the freedom of nurses seeking education or additional skills and training in foreign universities. Further aware that the National Assembly is the body empowered by the Constitution to make laws for the country, and the requirement of 2 years post-qualification experience by the Nursing and Midwifery Council is to legislate through the back door, and therefore tantamount to usurpation of the powers of the National Assembly. Worried that the requirement that applicants for verification must obtain a letter of good standing from the Chief Executive Officer of applicant's place of work is capable of creating forced labor and modern slavery, as applicants will be forced to be subject to the whims and caprices of an applicant's employer.
Another motion on same day has as part of resolutions investigation into level of compliance with the Disability Act 2018 by ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs of the government. This is as regards provision of access to infrastructure and orders. A lawmaker, Mr. Lanre Okunlola, moved the motion.
The House notes that Section 3(8) of the Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Act 2018 specifies that persons with disability has the right to access the physical environment, buildings on equal basis with others. Also notes that the World Health Organization estimates about 30 million Nigerians are persons with disability. Further notes that most persons with disabilities face stigmatization, discrimination, violence, and lack of access to physical structures such as transportation, health, education, housing, and other necessities of life. Aware that the National Assembly passed the Discrimination Against Persons
Honorable colleagues, silence please.
With Disabilities Prohibition
Please, order please.
And signed into law by former President Muhammad Buhari, but most ministries, departments, and agencies of government are yet to implement this act, which is contrary to Section 121 of the Disability Act 2018. Disturbed that if Discrimination Against Persons with Disability Prohibition Act is not fully implemented, the challenges faced by persons with disability will persist and the socio-economic development of Nigeria will remain impaired. The House resolved that to mandate the Committee on Disability to investigate the compliance level of the ministries, departments, and agencies of government to the Disability Act 2018. I so move, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Concerns over current incessant rise in cost of foodstuffs came on the floor of the House still as motion. A lawmaker, Chike Okafo, moved the motion on Wednesday on the urgent need for government to prevent food scarcity and shortage ahead of the next farming season. This was seconded by Unyimen Idem. The motion attracted contributions of other lawmakers. Let's have it.
The House notes the spreading issue of food scarcity in Nigeria and the impending nutritional dangers that are accompanying it. As we approach the farming season, it is imperative that we take immediate action to avert a worsening crisis and ensure the availability of food and well-being of our citizens. The House is aware that the current state of food scarcity in Nigeria poses a grave threat to the health and livelihoods of millions of our people. That insufficient access to nutritious food not only leads to hunger and malnutrition, but also exacerbates existing health conditions and undermines the overall development of our nation. It is worthy to note that the raining and the farming season is fast approaching, and the looming specter of food shortages looms large. Without adequate remedial measures in place, we risk plunging our country into deeper turmoil with far-reaching social, economic, and political implications. Hence, the need for a more purposeful gathering and more government import waivers for farming and agricultural equipment in Nigeria. Worried that nutrition and food is the most important existential challenge in Nigeria today, because 24.9 million Nigerians are presently in acute stage of hunger, and this is considered to be an emergency, while 85.8 million Nigerians have insufficient food consumption, and out of this number, 47.7 million Nigerians have a crisis or above crisis level in terms of food-based survival margin. Also worried that peaceful protests is already taking place in some states with citizens groaning due to hunger and demanding immediate government intervention. Cognizant that the government needs to increase the resources to support smallholder farmers and agrarian communities, ensuring that they have the necessary inputs, tools, and infrastructure to enhance food production through short-term subsidies as the government continues to strengthen the existing food distribution networks and mechanisms to ensure equitable access to essential food items across all regions of the country. The House is invited to resolve as follows. 1, urge the federal government to improve on short-term food subsidies, assistance to farmers, especially those engaged in dry season farming, improve supply chain control to reduce wastage and short-term price control. 2, that a National Food Security and Nutrition Summit is urgently convened by the Committee on Nutrition and Food Security in conjunction with other relevant committees of the House to address the current shortage of food and nutrition dangers with a view of finding lasting solutions to the food crisis facing the country. 3, to mandate all relevant government ministries, departments and agencies, civil society organizations, and private sector partners to actively participate in the summit and contribute towards the formulation of comprehensive solutions to ensure more legislative input for food security and nutrition for all Nigerians. And finally, also to mandate the Committee on Nutrition and Food Security and other level committees of the House to ensure compliance and report back to the House within 3 legislative weeks. Mr. Speaker, I so move.
Mr. Speaker and my colleagues, that as a parliament,
order please, order.
Even as Nigerians and Nigeria as a nation, that we are still talking and speaking to this issue simply means a lack of focus, a lack of vision, and the fact that we have not taken our planning very seriously. Mr. Speaker, I know that for the benefit of those who were here in the 8th Assembly, 9th Assembly, this very issue of food security took a lot of our time. All that we have asked for today, provide this, dry season farming, where are they going to farm? In as much as there is still insecurity in the land, farmers cannot go to their farms. All that we want to do is palliative. It will not work, Mr. Speaker. Food security, why is there security attached to it? There has to be that planning in your architecture of your national security, and you don't include food, you will fail. And that is why we have gotten to this point. If we must provide any palliative, we must provide incentives to farmers. The farming environment, the arable land, must first of all be secured, Mr. Speaker. Boots must be on ground for farmers to be assured that they can go to their farms and come back home. If we don't take that as the primary responsibility of governance, if we don't give enough impetus to it, if we don't attach seriousness to it, no matter what we will do, Mr. Speaker and my distinguished colleagues, it will be like pouring water on the back of the duck. It will not work. It is necessary and imperative at this point that we urge the federal government to consider seriously, the issue of securing the ungoverned spaces so that farmers and fishermen can really do their work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, the motion is timely because this is a situation over 75% of the Nigerian people could not have food on their plates. Mr. Speaker, it is about the insecurity. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the cost of the inputs to the farm is equally on the high rise. I am privileged to have been an executive chairman of a blending company. 5 years back, Mr. Speaker, a bag of fertilizer NPK 2010 was being sold at 5,000 to the off-takers. Then the off-takers add a margin of 500 cost of transportation, loading and unloading, being sold at 5,500. Today, Mr. Speaker, a bag of NPK 2010 is 38,000 naira. That is 38,000 naira. That is 8 times or 4 times, Mr. Speaker. If you are putting in 10 bags at 50,000, today you will require almost about 250,000 for you to have 8 bags on. Without these inputs, Mr. Speaker, definitely the output will never be as it was before. Mr. Speaker, sir, the government have a very good intention. The reason why I'm saying this is there is the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority that is in charge of bringing in the 2 components, that is the DAP and the MOP, one from Morocco, after signing an agreement with the Moroccan president, and the other one from Russia and Ukraine. Mr. Speaker, the volatility of the dollar is causing the problem of the importation of these 2 major components. And the government, we will urge the government to subsidize the importation of these 2 components of the raw materials. And Mr. Speaker, I want to tell you, even the Indo-Roma we have here, who is producing another segment or another component of the raw materials, that is the fertilizer, urea. We were to buy urea last year. Unfortunately, the same Indo-Roma are saying they are not going to sell in Naira, they are going to sell in Java. Mr. Speaker, the problem at hand, food insecurity, Mr. Speaker, and my fellow colleagues, is worse than any insecurity world over. With food insecurity, believe you me, we will go nowhere. There is going to be apprehensive in this country.
Most potential food producing in this country, and I'm a potential farmer, Mr. Speaker, and this motion, yes, this motion is timely, and it's very necessary to our country. But my contribution, Mr. Speaker, the move of this motion made mention of dry season farming alone.
Order.
I want to
in the
add
House.
that
Order.
all-round farming should be inclusive, in the sense that our farmers in the rural area will benefit, especially those that cultivate during the rain season. And in addition, Mr. Speaker, most of intensive given by the federal government are being benefited by non-farmers in Abuja. Let those grants be given to the villagers in various areas, in various local governments, in various wards who are producing food for this country. It will help, and it will help to secure and produce the food we need in this country. That is my little contribution, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Speaker, I wish to commend my colleague for bringing this all-important motion this early morning. Mr. Speaker, last week, Friday, the Daily Trust newspaper's front page headline talked about this issue of food insecurity. There was the front page read that youth attack trucks steal food items in Niger State. Mr. Speaker, interestingly, on Thursday, we were on our way coming back from Mina, myself and my honorable colleague Absamad Dasuki, and we almost ran into a mob. At the time this was taking place, we were getting to the spot. So what does this goes to show, Mr. Speaker? There is serious frustration in the land, and it's all as a result of the food insecurity that we're talking about. And the mover of the motion did speak about ungoverned spaces. Somebody talked about insecurity relating to ungoverned spaces. Mr. Speaker, if we look at some parts of this country, especially I can easily talk about my state, There are spaces, ungoverned spaces that are very secured, which if government is to pay serious attention to, some of these issues of food insecurity will not be a challenge that we overwhelm us as a people today. We've had enough of the talk shows. It should be about time we start taking actions and measuring actions as far as this nation building drive is concerned. We've had lots of talk shows without serious action. And like I said, my governor today is taking the lead in terms of giving the necessary attention to the agricultural sector. A lot you will have seen on the news that the state procured more than 300, we've received so far more than 300 tractors, expecting about 700 more. So such a state, I think, it's enticing for the federal government to go into a collaboration for such a state. So the government needs to be very measurable in terms of taking action on food insecurity. All these talk shows and what have you will not take us to where we want to get to as a country. There's been plenty policy mismatch. In the last dispensation, we must acknowledge that there was a little attention given to the agricultural sector, which brought about little stability in terms of food security. But even then, we did talk about mismatch between what the sector really needs and what the government was focusing on today. So I think the government should give particular attention in providing the necessary infrastructure to the farmplace so that we, even after the lifespan of this government, you leave something that is sustainable for others to come and build on.
I rise to support this motion and also ask for an amendment at the end of my support. I'm supporting this motion because it is in line with what Mr. President saw when he brought out the Renewed Hope agenda that prioritized food security. If you go to that agenda, you will see number 2 on that agenda, Mr. Speaker, is on food security. But beyond policy pronouncements, the mechanisms to achieve it, the federal government is working hard. We must commend them, their effort, but more need to be done. Mr. Speaker, ministries like Ministry of Agriculture should be more empowered to do more in that area. We need infrastructure in all other aspects of our life as a nation. But Mr. Speaker, I think where we need infrastructure mostly at the moment, especially the feeder roads, the farm roads, that is where we need Ministry of Works to look at. They should, and Ministry of Agriculture, let them see how to connect the farm roads to the markets. Most of the things that we are suffering in the nation at the moment is that post-harvest destruction of the produce is much. And it's not happening because the farmers don't want to take them to the farm. It's because the road between the farm and the market is so bad. So beyond insecurity, there is that need for infrastructure to connect the markets to the farm. It is also high time that we begin to look at what we used to have in Nigeria, those produce board, those cooperative societies whose job was to create new markets for produce that is coming up from the farms. If the farmers are sure that as long as their produce come out from the farm, that there is a ready market to get them, I can assure you they will put in more effort there. Something must be done in that direction. So while we look at other needs of the country, it is high time the country prioritizes agriculture. And the state government, I've heard the adumbration of my good friend, the Deputy Chairman of Finance, who acknowledged the effort of our own brother, who was once a member of the House of Representatives, Governor Bago, and the work he's doing in Niger State. We commend him. We are proud of him. He's an expert. He's a good expert of the National Assembly to the state. I know also Ebonyi State is doing well in the area of agriculture, and so are other governors. But I want, also he's also a former speaker, I also encourage other governors, please, other issues in the nation is important, but it is high time you prioritize your policies and the mechanisms to achieve those policies towards agriculture and this food security, so that what the president is doing from this level of the federal government will be felt also at the local level. If there is a need for any subsidy, Mr. Speaker, it is to subsidize these farm inputs and everything that has to do with farming. Let us put our energy there. We are hardworking people in Nigeria. We have been declared as one of the happiest people in the world because we can absorb hardness and keep moving, hardship and keep moving. I want to pray the governors prioritize. We urge you. We are not mandating you. We are urging you because all of us came from states. We urge you to prioritize the issue of agriculture. And having said that, Mr. Speaker, permit me and the honorable distinguished colleagues for me to move that the prayers of my brother in this wonderful motion be amended to include committees in agriculture, Ministry of Agriculture, which is House Committee on Agricultural Institution, House Committee on Agricultural Services, as part of the committees that will work with his committee in making sure that the issue of food security is taken to the next level. Thank you. I so move.
This amendment should say aye. Those against should say nay. The ayes have it. Those in support of this motion as amended should say aye. Those against should say nay. The ayes have it.
Similar motion was on the floor of the Senate. The Senate's Chief Whip, Senator Aline Dume, moved the motion that gained support of colleagues. Senators urged the federal government to introduce a food stamps program as an interim measure to cushion the effects of food insecurity in the country. They also called on the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security to liaise with development partners and other relevant stakeholders, especially the Lagos Food Bank Initiative, which introduced temporary food assistance program a few years ago. The motion.
The Senate knows that the unveiling of October 23rd Cadet Harmonized Analysis on Food Security, it was projected that in 2024, Nigeria is expecting to see about 26.5 million people grappling with high level of food security. By the way, Cadet Harmonized Analysis is the unified tool for conceptual analysis of acute food and nutrition insecurity in the Sahel and West Africa. And before I go on, distinguished colleagues, you can Google food stamps right away on your handset to have a better understanding of what the food stamp means because it's being practiced in America. Further notes that the reason for the above projection is not far-fetched as several indicators, which include but not limited to ongoing conflicts across the country, climate change impacts, escalating inflation as witnessed in recent times, and rising costs of both food and essential non-food commodities due to fall of Naira in the exchange market.
You know that there is a dire need for us to develop a system that is near foolproof, that can provide for the ordinary Nigerian. Mr. President, you won't be surprised. And I told one of my colleagues recently, a constituent of mine begged me to send him 1,000 Naira to be able to buy garri to drink. That is how bad our situation is. And so it will be a historical achievement of this administration if we find a foolproof arrangement to provide for the ordinary Nigerian. If the American government can do it, then we can also do it. And the place to start with is the representative of the people. Because the question that we have been asking is, how have they come to identify vulnerable persons in my Benue South Senatorial District or in Ubokulu for that matter, without my knowledge, without the knowledge of the councillor, without the...
From now, we commence payment of over 12 billion naira to 12 million vulnerable Nigerians. And I know the process is on. But with this kind of motion, specifying that a food stamp be made available to the vulnerable ones, I want to thank Senator Sadiq, who have given an insight into how do we ensure that this food stamp that we are asking the government to put in place gets to the right people. That is the main crux of the matter. We must, if we have put up a motion supporting this and sending it to the executive, the question is, how do we achieve this? from over 200 million populations. That shows our data, our statistics must be in place and must be up there for us to get the actual number of vulnerable Nigerians that are in dire need of this food stamp.
Those that need this food, it never gets to them. When those trucks comes out of the silos of that storage facility, only God knows where they go. But if this system is adopted, whereby I'm a beneficiary of this and I have my stamp, which I will present at every strategic location that have been identified for that purpose, and be able to be served, I think it will serve the purpose at which the government is trying to alleviate. And the issue of food security will actually be sustained. So the best thing is doing this and making sure that there is sustainability in it. I think when we do that, we will get it right.
It's well received by all and sundry and well contributed to. It's something that will help in dealing with our zeal to assist the poor of the poor in this country. Whatever measure that's brought forward to assist the poor, the vulnerable, should be welcome, and this is welcome. The Senate is open to every suggestion, every initiative, anything, any measure at all that will help in alleviating or making life better for our teeming population.
There was also a bit of disputing that ensued between two senators during one of the plenary sittings within the week, when a move to include Anambra State in the membership of Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) was rejected by the Red Chamber. This was between Senators Tony Nwoye and Jibrin Issa, as they held different opinions. Now, this is how it was on the floor, with the President of the Senate quelling the situation.
My senior colleague and my distinguished brother.
It's not the question. The question is not about Kogi. The question is not about Lagos. The question is not about Gombe. Can Kogi produce oil and not receive is the 13%?
Give you a copy until wait, allow me, sir. With due respect, sir. I want to correct an impression, sir, on the issue of boundary.
That letter you have is addressed to you, yes, based on Anambra, not on Kogi. Okay, let the senator from Kogi also write, like you wrote. You are not hearing what I'm saying, Tony. You wrote to the commission to find
to your presentation and to your state. What happens in Kogi State is entirely it's not your business. I am telling you that information getting to me shows that Kogi has been receiving. If that information, if that information is wrong, if that information is wrong, I will get back to Kogi and get the correct information. But that is not what we are saying now. What we are saying now, that is not what we are saying. Nobody is misinforming anybody. Nobody is misinforming anybody. Okay? Limit yourself to your bill and defend it. Okay? Yes. What I am saying is this.
Okay. Well, the distinguished colleagues, I don't think if Anambra State is part of Niger Delta. It's not for us as a Senate to go into geography. It will be good for the National Boundary Commission to explain it to us. But because I don't want us to be dragged into an issue that is so simple, if you were not getting your 13% derivation, that would have been a different thing. But since you are getting that, and also, you are also a member of the PIA, that is the host communities, as set up by the Act of Parliament today, and therefore you are also gaining. Those communities are also gaining from the host communities funds. I don't think we should be in a hurry to redefine Niger Delta to include Anambra, Gombe, and all that, but be that as it may, let us put the question. Distinguished colleagues, those who are in support of the argument that this bill be now read a second time to go for second reading, say aye. Those against say nay. The next have it. Leader of the Senate.
Well, that's the much time permits us to take today on the program. Thank you for being part of it. And let's do it again Friday next week. A quick reminder, though, that you can watch all editions of The Maze on our YouTube channel, ASO Radio and Television. Like our page and subscribe. I am Rosemary UKOKO-TEGA.